I think it's inarguable that some form of stability and stability training is really beneficial for a lot of athletes, people, individuals across the board. I think we get confused as to what instability actually is in the dynamic, chaotic world of life. So, what I mean by that is a lot of times when we see stability exercises, we see exercises that challenge people to hold a postural position for a given amount of time, maybe under some sort of perturbation, being bumped, oscillating a weight, an unstable surface, and progression of that stability exercise comes in the form of more chaos, either more intense perturbations, greater instability, and so on. You often see that also associated with certain exercises and lifts, where the lift itself, its completion is determined based on not necessarily your ability to be strong, how much weight you can lift, but the stability you're able to produce during the lift. Again, it's maybe a little more dynamic than just holding a position, but as a whole, it's still not really what we encounter in real life. Caveat, by the way, I don't mind those exercises. I think they exist for a reason. We'll get back to them in a second, but let me just move forward. In real life, the most common instabilities you're going to encounter will typically occur during 2-foot locomotion, walking, running, whatever the heck you're doing. Rarely do we have instabilities where we are on 1 foot reaching out for something and trying to hold a position. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I've ever held a given unstable position in life for more than 15 seconds, like trying to put something on the top drawer of a cabinet, maybe, is the most reasonable example, but very rare circumstances. However, stepping over a curb and hitting a curb and stubbing your toe and all these other aspects are far more common. So in real life, a lot of our instability comes from an open to closed chain movement. I shouldn't call it totally closed, but basically from foot leaving the ground to foot hitting the ground, and during that time course of foot leaving the ground to foot hitting the ground, our environment changes. We get bumped, someone catches our attention, we turn and look, we don't realize that the curve is there, and we hit it. We step on a slippery surface that we expect to not be so slippery, but they typically occur, initiated at least, during the air phases or the actual contact phase preceding a step, or I should say following a step. Makes sense. In sport, same thing. We're running, we're playing basketball, dynamic stability during I call it dynamic because it's purposeful stability. That's probably a better way to describe it. Like dynamic stability in basketball might be able to shoot a step back jump shot, creating stability through the planted leg and pushing back off. Now, is that somehow more dynamic than life? No, but it's more purposeful. It's for a skill. Cool, wonderful. That is a form of stability. In the weight room, those activities we're performing don't necessarily challenge the aspects, or they challenge some of the aspects, but not all the aspects that we see in the chaotic instabilities of life. In life, we typically hit the ground and we have some sort of rapid co-contraction around the hip. If you've ever stepped on ice, you understand this. It feels like your joints freeze up, no pun intended, but you lock in the degrees of freedom to create control and brace your body. Same thing when someone pushes you. When someone pushes you, you don't just stick the position, you hop a couple times. You stumble. You dissipate the forces that you got hit with, and then you try and gather yourself. Now, this is the same exact kind of motion and movement that we see with some types of plyometrics. And that's why I think low-level plyometrics, hops, skips, jumps, whatever you're comfortable with in your ability, is a form of stability training because it's preparing the tissues to direct and redirect momentum. I think a lot of our life is about directing and redirecting momentum. And so when we have to move, stumble, fall, whatever it might be, we have to have the ability to redirect and then restabilize the momentum itself. Now let me talk on those exercises really quick that I mentioned in the weight room. It can isolate certain aspects for people. So for example, if you close your eyes, you might place a more demand on your vestibular system. Maybe you have one eye open and you're challenging your visual system. Or you're moving your arms, or you're offloaded, so you're challenging your sensory motor abilities, your proprioception. And those exercises are fine. There's a time and place for it. When we start to say that if you can do a single leg RDL with 185 pounds, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. What happens is we start to mix two worlds that are naturally, they have some differences, put it that way, between them, where if we're trying to overload stability, well, let's find ways to actually challenge stability. There's a difference between challenging stability and what we call like movement of what we see in life, maybe challenging stability to isolate certain systems, and then challenging stability during just a really heavy weightlifting exercise, which makes you, I guess, more stable when you do really heavy weightlifting exercises, but probably doesn't transfer a whole bunch anywhere else. And so that's kind of how I think about the dynamic stability of life, and why I think plyometrics and not isolated, but like, I guess you can call them isolated single leg stability movements, or the ones I mentioned, eyes closed and postural challenges, can be beneficial and melded together. However, we have such a massive underemphasis and appreciation of these extensive plyometrics and the ability to control your momentum, handle momentum, and move your body around as a means of stability that it's so often overlooked. Now, on top of that, when we train plyometrics, it's much more than just like the stability factor. Stability is an outcome. And so we have the tissues being developed to handle its impacts, the training of the actual coordinated co-contractions around the hips, your loading musculature. There are many different things that go well beyond just increasing stability when it comes to doing low-level plyometrics. And I think life itself is so often low-level plyometric, kind of jogging, stepping quickly. Those are all kind of plyometric-like actions, much more so than any weightlifting exercise. Even a quick step when you're walking down the stairs or sideways off a curb is occurring faster and in much, much different joint ranges of motion than that of basically any exercise you're going to do in the weight room. So I challenge yourself to consider those aspects of stability, and why I think some of those plyometric-like movements, side to side, front to back, multi-planar, curves, walks, runs, are all so beneficial. So appreciate you guys listening as always. Thank you. Hope you enjoy. Feel free to subscribe, share, and take care.